Hello, I'm Annabelle Daniel, the Chief Executive of Women's Community Shelters, and it is rapidly coming up to the end of the financial year. And this end of financial year, Women's Community Shelters is seeking your help to create another 30,000 safe bed nights for women and children, with a goal of raising $100,000. So $100,000 will help us provide those additional bed nights, which will provide additional support to about 750 women and children each year. And what's really important to me today is that I take a bit of time to share with you the story of just one. Now, our Abbey House facility is a partnership with City West Housing, the City of Sydney and Scape Student Accommodation. It's been open since January, and we've supported 15 women, mostly between the ages of about 18 and 32, since January, and 12 out of those 15 have experienced domestic and family violence. Many of them are studying, they're doing education, they're in TAFE, they're looking for work, or they're actively employed, and all of them are seeking a better life for themselves. What I'd like to talk to you about today is the story, the incredible story of Faria, one of the women that we have supported. And I'll just flag up front that it's really important to note that this contains strong themes of domestic and family violence, so if that is going to be disturbing for you, you might want to stop watching the video now. But I think it's really important because this story struck me that in 2022, these things are still happening to women and children. So Faria referred herself to Abbey House in early 2022, and she'd spent most of her life fleeing violence from her home country, family, and most recently her husband in Australia. Faria has experienced physical, psychological, financial and sexual abuse, and her case is currently being investigated by the Australian Federal Police as an act of modern slavery. It's that serious. Faria was brought to Australia from Iraq in 2018 by her second husband. Her mother insisted that she remarry someone outside Iraq, as she was no longer safe to stay there. Before coming to Australia, Faria was being threatened daily by her brother, as she had divorced her first husband, who was also her cousin, father to her 2 children, and who she was forced to marry at the age of just 13. During this first marriage, Faria experienced unspeakable violence, and yet by divorcing, she also brought significant shame to her family in her culture. So her mother found an Iraqi man who had Australian citizenship and was willing to marry Faria. The marriage was arranged quickly and Faria was brought to Australia. Upon arrival, Faria soon realised that she was entering another abusive relationship. Her new husband lived with his mother and sisters, and Faria was expected to cook, clean, and be a servant for this new family. Faria was not permitted to leave the house and experienced verbal, psychological, and physical abuse from both her husband and his mother. After a short time, Faria's husband resolved to send her back to Iraq, stating that he would bring her back to Australia once he could find a house for just the 2 of them, citing that the issues in their marriage were due to his mother. Faria returned to Iraq at the end of 2018, and once back in Iraq, the violence from her own family escalated severely. At one point, her brother held a gun to her head and told her that she'd brought such shame to the family that she didn't deserve to live. Faria attempted to get in touch with her husband in Australia, resolving that living with him was at least better than being in Iraq, but discovered that he was never intending to bring her back. Faria was to be divorced a second time, and both she and her mother knew that if she didn't leave immediately, she just wouldn't be alive much longer. Faria's mother arranged for her to travel with another couple heading to Australia, as Iraqi law does not permit women to travel on their own. Faria landed in Sydney at the end of 2019 and couch surfed around the houses of family friends who often expected housework and childcare in exchange for a bed to sleep in. In 2 of the homes, she was sexually assaulted by the husband. After about 6 months of these temporary arrangements, she was put in touch with a large charity. It would be the first time that Faria was offered legitimate help by a service. Faria was soon linked in with another charity's grant and referred to a solicitor to work on her immigration status. She stayed in transitional housing, but was asked to leave. In early 2022, Faria had to search for housing as her current option had expired. She called service after service and was eventually connected to women's community shelters. When meeting Faria, she was timid and stated that she couldn't speak English very well. An interpreter was organised and she began to share some of her story with us. She was on an extremely limited income, but felt she was independent enough not to need to go into a crisis shelter. She wanted to move on with her life, but didn't know where to go or quite how to begin. And with tremendous support of an amazing philanthropic funder of ours, Faria was offered housing at Abbey House. She is able to make some contribution from her payments, while the remainder of the cost of her rent is covered by a grant. Since coming to Abbey House, Faria has blossomed. She no longer needs an interpreter. She trusts her own skills to communicate with staff and other residents. She's continually looking for work, and staff have recently supported her to apply for a program that will assist her to attend TAFE to obtain her Certificate 3 in hairdressing. She's obtained her first aid certificate and is registered to get a white card which will enable her to work on building sites. At her most recent meeting with staff, Faria disclosed her experiences with some services in Sydney. She said that she hadn't felt she'd been supported really well before, and even when they told her that they would help her, she didn't quite believe them. She shared that when she met women's community shelter staff, she felt a shift. She shared that when staff stated they would help her, she believed them, and that they had given her hope for her future. Her final testament to WCS was that she felt the care was provided was the best that she'd ever had. It's Faria's goal to obtain citizenship in Australia so that she can bring her 2 daughters across from Iraq. Faria is insistent that she will not allow her 2 girls to be forced down the same life path as her. And so our Abbey House opportunity has given her the opportunity to focus on her needs outside housing so she can achieve those end goals. She's willing, she's committed, and she has shown that she will do whatever it takes to have the life that she and her children deserve. And as we approach the end of the financial year, I can't think of a better story to share with you to explain how life-changing it is, the work that we do at women's community shelters. And again, that's one of the amazing stories and the amazing women with incredible resilience who we support. And with your support, we can do so much more. Help us achieve another 30,000 bed nights and reach that goal of $100,000. Thank you.